8:39 Newstalk Sauga 960 Raw, Mike Richards. Well, as you know, over the years, we've had a lot of different guests. And sometimes, people try to figure out the angle. Like, why do you have this person on? Or is it simply a sponsorship deal? Well, I can be honest. There are people in this world that have been on the show in the different incarnations since going all the way back to Calgary, to the Fan, where so we've had Dana White. So Dana White comes on the show. Dana White has created his own universe. He didn't create mixed martial arts, but the way in which we consume it, he did in a genius-like fashion. I look at locally here. A lot of people know Magnotta wines. Well, Gabriel Magnotta, when he passed away, unfortunately, he also took an industry, didn't invent wine, but he was one of these guys who said, well, why does the LCBO, why are they the only ones who get to sell wine? I'm not doing that. And that's exactly what Gabe did. He decided he would do it a different way. That, to me, by definition, is a maverick. Well, the gentleman we're going to have on now is the same way. He sees things differently, and then he implements it differently. The best part of these guys that I'm talking about, it's all better for the consumer. It's all better for you and me when guys like this exist. And the fact that he has now joined us here on Newstalk Sauga 960 is absolutely fantastic news. So this morning, for the first time, we have Greg Carrasco on this morning. Greg, thanks so much for joining us here this morning.
Wow, that's a pretty impressive introduction there. When I'm in the same sentence as Dana White,
Yes, there you go. Hey, one day you might be fighting for him.
I don't know. He's a big dude, man. I mean, I'm just a little guy from Chile, But I'm super happy to be here with you guys, and I think that you said a couple of very interesting things in the introduction, and the moment that I met the family that owns the radio station Sauga 960, I wanted to be part of it. I think that Southern Ontario is starving for some smart, engaging conversation. And I believe that you guys are doing that. So I wanted to be part of this growing community. I think that it's very important that people know you guys exist, that you're here, and this is growing aggressively. But thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, we're thrilled. And as I said, the thing that we're always very engaged by, the thing that we're always attracted to, is people who see the world differently. And you do. The car industry, for the most part, it's kind of all the same. The guys, quite honestly, who own the dealerships look the same. The cars look the same. And people are always looking for something different that's in their best interest. You go to almost in the same way that you do mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You have done the same thing within the industry, whether it's having your own radio shows, television shows, podcasts, what you do on Facebook, social media. You go to the nth degree to show people that it can be done differently. Against the grain too, by the way, Greg. I'm sure the rest of the industry is not thrilled when you do this.
I don't have a lot of friends in the car industry, but hey, listen, it is what it is. I mean, somebody told me once that when you have too many friends in an industry, you're not creating enough waves. But for me, it's been a bit of a trip because when I came to Canada back in 1989, I spent a few years in the Canadian Army. And I started my car career not too far from where you guys are at right now. I started selling cars at 401 Dixie Nissan in Dixie and 401 there when I could barely speak English, guys, barely speak English. And very quickly, I understood that there was a vacuum. There was a vacuum for just straight up, honest conversation with the consumer. Most people didn't need to be sold. They just needed some help getting a job done. So I made a very simple rule early on that then I applied on my radio show. And this was the rule. If my mom was asking me this question, what would I tell my mom? And for some reason, that became some sort of a moral compass that I was unable to steer away from. And that's how everything started, just telling customers the truth, whether they liked it or not. So at least if they were going to make a mistake, it was not going to be on my account.
Greg, let me ask you your media background. You talk about coming to Canada in 1989 and so forth, but it almost seems like you have this natural ability to speak, to deliver a message. Was media and broadcasting, public speaking, always part of your youth growing up? And how did you become so good at it?
Oh, thank you. To be perfectly honest with you, I suffer from a severe case of insecurities, that I never think I'm good enough to do this. And, I often, look at what we've done over the years, and I think, how did we get here? No, media was never part of the background. I grew up in Chile in the 70s and 80s, in the middle of one of the harshest dictatorships on the planet. And, communication or exchanging ideas was not something that was encouraged in our society. So when I came up here, I mean, it did take me a few years to learn to speak English, but then after I learned it proficiently enough, you couldn't make me stop talking. So I think that this is just it's repressed communication. I think that talking to people and exchanging interesting and insightful content is something that has always interested me. I think that I don't like cars. I've never been a car person. I'm more of a student of people. And when you get the opportunity to meet thousands and thousands of different individuals, it is impossible for you not to start seeing patterns. And based on those patterns, I realized that there was a lot of people that were speaking the same language that just didn't have a common voice, especially in the car industry. So I think I was fortunate enough, Dave, that I became an early adopter. I was a very, very adopter of computers, very early adopter of social media. Look at it this way. We were selling cars on Facebook back in 2009. People are just getting into this right now. It's too late. You missed the boat. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that being an early adopter and also just being continued development and investment on your own ideas and intellect has this ability to just make you say things, to make you communicate. And I have never been able to stop myself from talking.
So I said, a Chileno. So I should have said, mucho gusto, lo siento, hermano, lo siento. I did not know.
Don't get him started, Greg. Yeah. Don't get him started.
Well, I live with a Cuban girl, so I get a little excited, just so you know.
Oh boy. I detected the Cuban accent there for a second.
At least I didn't start the sentence with oye, which normally is the way I talk. But see, this is part of what I find interesting in people. When you look at those that had to figure something out, and very often when people come from other parts of the world, generally it's going to be Europe, in this case, South America, because your vision of something immediately, organically is different than others, because as you said, you didn't come from a wealthy family that owns car dealerships, because you've had to, for the lack of a better term, tap dance your way through and find a connection with other people. This is what makes it different. For instance, when I look at some of your social media, including this morning, the way that you go about selling cars, it is, again, going back to your Brazilian jiu-jitsu, all of a sudden the industry's kind of put in one of those arm bars and they don't like it. But you know who wins? It is us. And all we want, Greg, for the most part, is just honesty from somebody. I mean, if you're, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
The reason the show's called Raw Mike Richards is because we'll just talk about anything, whether it's our personal lives, whether it's sports. It's not necessarily that I think I know more about sports. I'm sure a lot of people know more about sports than I do. But it is my take on how I see an athlete, a game, an event. That's what makes the show. And I'm going to be honest about it. I think your approach to life is just that. As much as people will see a media personality, what I find interesting in this interview is you may not think that you're good at that, which most people would disagree with you. But...
Well, I think that that is, those insecurities that I talked to you about. I mean, growing up in the ghettos in Santiago, Chile, certainly made my sister and I, because she moved up here a few years after I did, survivors. And when you're not given a head start, you need to figure things out. And when you figure things out, you find a way to adapt, to improvise, and like in the army, they say to overcome all these different obstacles. And then when you understand something so profoundly, then you are able to communicate with people in different ways. And, I can tell you that the car industry for a very long time, and I mean, and rightfully so, they had a terrible, terrible reputation. And you see, this was before the era of massive information. But today, you know, whatever you want to find out about a price, about cost, about a dealership is all available online. So today people just want to be heard. They just want to be understood. You know, the time of trickery, of the time of sales techniques to close people, that nonsense is been is really being sent out of style. I mean, it's been for the last 15 years or so. So I can tell you this, man, the car industry is not what it used to be. And I think that what gives us an edge here at Oakville Nissan and Oakville Infinity, or wherever I happen to be working at, because I've built a career on changing processes and restructuring companies. That's what I do. I think that people expect a product. And, you know, we have 3 rules here whenever I hire somebody at the company, Mike, and these are the following. If you are ever caught lying to one of my customers, you will be dismissed on the spot. Number 2, I don't like drama at the store, because drama is like cancer in a car dealership, especially when we were so close together. And the last one is that when I need you to do something, we need to get it done right away, because the customer is waiting on the other side. So there is a sense of urgency. You know, I'll share something that not a lot of people know, Mike, is that in every company that I've ever taken over and I run, I have a box underneath my desk that doesn't allow to push my feet forward too deep into the desk, because you never know when is your last day at that company. And I never want to get comfortable. I never, ever, ever want to get comfortable. And I have used that as a motto in my life. Don't ever get complacent, man, because you never know when is the last day that you're going to be working somewhere. And we drive our businesses that way.
Wow,
Well,
very impressive.
it is also too, when I look at how you would have grown up in those very turbulent times, how scary that must have been. There must have been massive insecurity amongst all your people of that time. And when you mention, you know, when you eventually leave, Greg, did you think you were going to get out alive? Did you think that you were going to make it out?
And, you know, this is something that I don't talk often about, but it has happened. I mean, my sister and I grew up without parents, and growing up in the ghetto, I knew that I wasn't going to stay there. I knew that I was either going to leave either to Brazil and just hitchhike. We had some very, very distant relatives in Australia. And then fortuitously, I ended up coming to Canada, but it was just by chance. It wasn't planned. But I can tell you this, I knew that I was leaving, but I also knew that I was never, ever, ever, ever going back. I burned all my boats. And at the first opportunity that I had to become a Canadian citizen, I did it. I think it was, at the time, it was like 2.5 years or 3 years that you needed to be in the country. I resigned my citizenship and I became a Canadian. And I did something that wasn't particularly popular at the time. I assimilated. I wanted to be a Canadian. I think, you know, Canada was such an awesome, awesome country filled with immigrants that I thought, I'm not doing the country a favor by me trying to preserve things that I escaped from. So I just became a Canadian. You know, I joined the army. I paid my allegiance to the Queen. I know whether that's, you know, popular these days or not. You know, I was willing to lay down my life down for the country. And on that basis alone, I think that it gave me a different perspective of commitment to making it. And when you literally eliminate any bridge that you have to the old country, and there is no option but to succeed. You know, the car business happened to just being fortuitous. You know, like I said to you before, I never liked cars, but I felt that there was enough people that I could grow. And, you know, throughout my life, guys, I have met some amazing, amazing people that out of nowhere, they have shown unbelievable, awesome kindnesses that you really can't explain. And one thing leads to another. And next thing you know, you're running companies and you think, how did we get here? You know, how did we get here? And I've been a very, very lucky person, guys. Very lucky.
Well, I know why you would say you've been very lucky, but it's been well earned. It has been something that did not fall into your lap. It's you were thrown into the water, and you had to swim. I mean, that's what you did, but you have become an Olympic champion swimmer at the same time by doing this. And as I said, I think the real benefit is knowing people in your community. Like I've known your name for years, but this is the first time we've actually had a chance to talk and meet each other. And I know we're out of time already because apparently we have a new sponsor and we have to get to his billboard. So we have to do that. but I, you know what? Next time I would love to. We could do an hour.
Let's do this again, Greg.
We could do so much because it's more than just the company that you have. It's part of what makes a community. And I always say that is always a disservice in radio, especially ones that are so heavily formatted, that we don't get to talk to people. We talk at them. And we talk about what your company does, and whatever that happens to be. I wanted to get to know. I feel like a lot of us here this morning would have learned a lot of things about Greg Carrasco that maybe they didn't know beforehand, and are probably just like myself, still fascinated and very much interested in who Greg Carrasco is.
I really, really appreciate the interest that you guys have taken in having a chat with me. A lot of people see an image. They see a persona that is portrayed on commercials, and a lot of it is got a purpose. You need to instigate thought. So they think that that's all there is to me. And I can tell you, I mean, I'm a father of 3. I don't smoke, I don't drink, I don't do any drugs. I'm a pretty easygoing guy. Now, look, I'm covered in tattoos and I have a Harley. So it's not what appears,
Yes, yes.
What you see is not what is. And it's a very interesting thing. But guys, I'm here at Oakville Nissan, Oakville Infinity, and we are super, super happy to be part of the Sauga 960 community. And I hope that we can build on this and grow and stay together for a very, very, very long time.
Well, we feel the same way. Thank you so much for this morning. I know we'll be talking again, but on behalf of all of us at Newstalk Sauga 960, certainly on behalf of Dave and myself, welcome to the team, and we're happy that you're a part of this.
That's awesome, guys. Thank you. Have an amazing, amazing summer. Okay, we'll talk soon. Peace.
Hasta luego.
Hasta luego. Ciao, ciao.
Greg Carrasco here this morning. I knew this would be good, but that was great. As Jim Rome would say, that was a great interview. Greg Carrasco, you thought you knew him. You thought you knew everything about him. And then he does that. Great interview.